The secret number for Lesson 5 is 4. Lesson 5, Vocal Health. One of the major issues that singers have whenever they're doing some kind of an audition or performance is that they have some kind of an issue with vocal health. There are so many different things that could be going on that I am not a doctor of medicine, so I'm not going to diagnose anything. But one of the things that is a typical problem that a lot of people have is that when they go to an audition or they go to a situation like that, they have a cold or a sore throat, and they allow that cold or sore throat to inhibit their performance in some way, shape, or form. And so, again, in your textbook, we talk a lot about the different strategies to be able to how to handle a cold or a sore throat. I'm not going to reiterate all those right now, but one of the things that I'm going to focus on is the idea that when you are trying to sing with some kind of a illness or a chronic situation with your throat, you always want to be mindful that you want to minimize whatever the problem is while you're performing. And while you're practicing, you want to minimize anything that will cause more problems as you're getting ready for that performance. A perfect example would be one time I had a sore throat and a cold, and I was having to sing in a large group for a national recording. Now, I realized that I was getting a cold and a sore throat just as the first rehearsals for the recording sessions began. Well, there was only so much I could do because I had to sing full voice and I had to be able to do it for hours at a time, and the recording sessions were, there are 4 days of them, so there wasn't really a time where I could just be on vocal rest during those days and heal myself. So inevitably I got to the end of all that and I had no voice left. Only problem was I was singing a solo 1 week later, so now I was really in a pickle and I wanted to figure out, well, how in the world can I make sure to solve this? So I went through and did a lot of the techniques that are discussed in the text. Luckily, the morning of the performance, I had gotten my full voice back and I was able to sing, and nobody knew that I had lost my voice the whole prior week. The biggest problem with singing with any kind of an illness is simply this. Your voice and your vocal cords are all part of the singing mechanism, and when you have some kind of an illness that affects it, you have to be mindful that while you try and sing, you are probably causing more irritation to that area, which is making it harder to get better. Rest is extremely important, both vocally and otherwise. Making sure that you're hydrating so that everything here stays less inflamed is also very important. So making sure that you're drinking drinks that are actually hydrating your voice and not making them drier. A lot of people think about, oh, well, I'll just drink hot tea. Well, that's great, but hot tea has caffeine in it, some of them do, and so caffeine is a drying agent, which then causes problems against. Other people think about, well, I can drink such and such a drink or such and such a drink. Well, you want to make sure that you're trying to drink anything that's going to cause more water into the system and less inflammation. One of the things that I talked about in the text is the idea of coughing correctly, and I'll give a demonstration of both right now, and I'll show you what it is that it actually does to your vocal cords. Example A. When people cough and they're clearing their throat, they do something along the lines like this. And essentially what you're doing to your vocal cords, picture these as your vocal cords, is you're doing this to them every time you do that, because you're stopping the air and then you're pushing. So you're doing this. Now, imagine if you're doing this and they're already hurting and they're already red. Well, they're just going to get more inflamed. What does that then do? Cause more phlegm, causing you to clear your throat more, which then continues this horrible cycle of getting worse and worse and worse. If you cough normally, where you're not clearing your throat, where you're causing that tension, where it's something like this, what you're doing there is the phlegm and everything that's on your vocal cords is causing the irritation. You're doing this with your vocal cords and passing air across them, which is then causing the phlegm to be removed, but you're not doing that abrupt extra inflammation on top of that. I talk a lot about cough drops in the textbook, and I just want to reiterate the situation with menthol. So menthol is a numbing agent, which means that you're basically taking it to where these vocal cords, you don't feel all that irritation until the menthol wears off. So if you're singing while they're irritated and you can't feel what's going on, chances are you're doing stuff to them that's causing more inflammation. So when the menthol wears off, then suddenly you feel like, oh, my throat is worse. What do I need to do? I'll have another cough drop. That'll add numbness, and then I'll continue to sing. As you can see, that's also another vicious cycle that will just continue to make things worse. So you want to do some kind of a cough drop that is like a Hall's vitamin C drop or something along those lines, where you're actually giving some more hydration without causing the pain to go away, so you know when you're actually causing more pain. Pain is there for a reason. It's usually to tell us that something is wrong. So if you numb the pain and you just continue to stab at it, shall we say, with the vocal cords, it's really going to cause more damage in the long run. All in all, one of the things that you want to be remembering as you're doing anything with your vocal health is it's just like with anything else. If you're trying to do something to where you're combating the disease without giving it more inflammation, you want to do that. So whenever you're doing anything with a sore throat or a cold, you want to do stuff that is not going to cause more inflammation. I talk a little bit about alkalinity in the text, and I just want to reiterate that as well. A lot of things talked about in journals and other situations. We'll talk about how the whole body is involved with the voice. Well, your whole body, when you get sick, is also involved, and you want to get rid of as much of the toxins that are involved with the illness as possible. So you want your bloodstream to be in the alkaline, not the acidic form. And a lot of Americans in particular, just in normal everyday life, by what we eat, it is acidic. So that eating your veggies that your parents probably told you when you were a kid really applies here. So you want to do stuff that is going to actually make your body be optimal for getting rid of the illness. So one of the things, as you're if you're in a situation where it's an extreme example, and say, for example, you have a performance that's coming up and you just got a sore throat and a cold, you want to go on a complete vocal rest, which essentially means you're not using your vocal cords to talk, you're writing down what you need to say to people if you need to, and you're just hydrating like crazy. And then the day of the performance, you can then test and check and do lots of warm-ups so that your body is able to do as best as it can in that scenario.